Hanratty'S Huddle with your host, Terry Hanratty. Hi, I'm Dave Toromeo, and we are on episode number 3 of Hanratty'S Huddle. And Terry, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Dave. Good to be back, and good to be talking to our fans out there.
Yeah, I think the fan will get some really good feedback from the first 2 episodes, but let's dive right in. You have some thoughts today about some things that are going on in the college sports world right now. Let's start with the University of Michigan. What's going on there, Terry?
Well, I think we could probably go back a little bit and see, when our good friend Jim Harbaugh got penalized at the beginning of the year for recruiting problems, and I thought it was one of these self-imposed they put on the head coach, and I had to laugh when it first happened because I looked at the schedule, and they played East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green.
Yep.
And they suspended Jim for 3 games. In those games, they scored over 100 points, and they kept their opponents down to below 20 points. So that was not a big suspension they put on Jim.
Right.
But there's a fine line. As much as I dislike Michigan, there's a fine line between scouting a team and being illegal.
Right.
And, I don't think the NCAA really defined it. I know they have some new rules now that you're not allowed to, I think it's the 2 games that you can go, you're allowed to scout teams.
Right. They try to balance the books with schools that didn't have as much money and couldn't travel as much. So they, and obviously there's a lot now what you can do online with film exchange and, like Huddle, things like Huddle, where you can you can watch your opponent, right?
Yeah, they tried to keep the people out of it. I mean, Michigan was unbelievable. They had the one guy that in charge of all this stuff had 11 games where he bought tickets to airlines, and he bought tickets to the games, and he bought them online. And I mean, he probably paid top dollar for them. But those are things you wonder why you want to break the rules like that, because Michigan is such a talented team, and there's no reason for them to really do anything. People should be doing that against Michigan. They're that good, and so I don't know why Jim had to feel like he had to step out of the box. If this is all insinuation now. We're not sure. Nothing has been proven. Nobody's guilty at this point, but it sure points that way.
It sure does. And the guy they're talking about is a guy by the name of Connor Stallions, who actually is he's a military guy. And obviously, big Michigan fan. So I doubt myself that he was doing this on his own without the knowledge of the head coach. But this is what's happened.
Well, he was on their payroll also.
Correct.
So that obviously shows the connection there, and to be able to going out to scouting bowl games and scouting the opposing teams like on Ohio State, and there's teams in the Big Ten that they really don't need to be scouted. You watch a couple games of film, and that's about it, and you go from there.
Well, here's what's happened. So this guy, Connor Stallions, bought tickets to more than 30 games. Many of them were in the Big Ten and used, quote, illegal technology, end quote, to steal signs. He's been suspended with pay. I wish somebody would suspend me with pay. What's the point of that? But, Harbaugh has been entangled with the NCAA many, many times. And I come back to this cheating thing, and we could talk about the Patriots and, what happened with them over the years, because obviously, they were embroiled with a lot of cheating controversy, and I frankly believe a lot of it. I mean, a lot of it was proven. I don't know, to answer your question about why a team like Michigan would feel the need, but I guess when you're maybe paranoid.
There was no reason for Nixon.
Well, okay.
To bust into Watergate, because he had about a 60% approval.
Yeah.
He had a 60% approval, and it was easily going to skate through the next election, and they get a little to the point where I can never be caught. And that's sort of the downfall of most people. But I go back to one time with the Steelers. Chuck, when we first moved into Three Rivers Stadium, that's way back in the day, and they looked over the field. There was a club that people come in for dinner and lunch, and obviously sit during the ball game, and it was the Allegheny Club.
Mm-hmm.
And Chuck would, when we played Cleveland, he would arrange with the people in the Allegheny Club that anybody who came for lunch, because we were practicing on the field, so you could watch the practice from the Allegheny Club.
Right.
He said whenever we played Cleveland, he made sure that everybody up in the club knew keep all restaurant Patriot off to the side. do not allow them to watch. Put them in an angle where they cannot watch practice, because he knew that a couple of people from Pittsburgh who were big. I won't mention their names, but they were big Cleveland fans, and they were coming in there to check things out for who knows what strange things that would happen back in the day.
But you're right, and the thing is, it's not only, it's always, like a guy like Belichick or a guy like Harbaugh. But even college basketball over the years, we saw it with John Calipari. We saw it with Rick Pitino. These guys, they, for some reason, they feel the need to get that upper hand by doing things that are not legal. And I blame, at least in college sports, I blame a very weak NCAA.
Well, the NCAA has been around, but they've really never been around.
Right.
They don't really penalize anybody, and I think you're going to see almost a demise of the NCAA because of these power conferences that are coming up now, and they're just going to take over, and the NCAA is going to sort of just get phased out and right off into the sunset. And you think about now there's something going to happen to Michigan.
Yeah.
There's going to be some kind of penalty. But then when you really look at it, what the NCAA, all they can do is penalize you on the regular season and the bowl games. Well, right now, Michigan is ranked number 1 or 2 by some different polls. But they're going to be in the playoffs. I think they have no problem beating Ohio State, so they're going to be in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So that is not governed by the NCAA. So Michigan could be banned from regular season games,
right.
They can still play in the playoffs.
Play in that playoffs.
Because that's under their own guidance.
Not sanctioned.
And so that would be an interesting situation.
Championship Series would be
And there's a lot of rumors that maybe this was Harbaugh's last year in college. So.
Well, I think we hear those rumors every year. It's interesting. It must be exhausting being a Michigan fan, because going through that every year would be annoying. I think, a couple years ago it was Minnesota, then it was this. So who knows? But yeah, listen, they are a very good team. We know that. Why, they're always, with the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's always seems to be smoke around this guy. So.
And there's going to be fire coming up here. Yeah. It's just a matter how they temper it. I think that's the real thing. They self-imposed 3-game sanction, and the NCAA probably did. Thank you, because they didn't have to rule on something like that. But we knew the 3 games that you and I could have gone out there and coached Michigan without knowing any of the players. Just make sure the bus got to the field, and you're going to win those 3 games.
That's right. And to your point, I agree about the NCAA as a dying entity, because years ago I was the vice president of the National Football Foundation College Hall of Fame, and I thought by now it would have happened. I thought what's actually happening now, with the conferences realigning and the super conference being formed, that this would, because let's be honest about it, college football drives athletics. It's above college basketball. I'm sorry if anybody's offended. It's above water polo. All these other sports exist because at the big schools, college football brings in the money. Now, I think the NCAA is something where these schools, once they form the super conference, the ACC, the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, right? It's going to be like, okay, we can govern ourselves. We'll hire our own, executive director, our own people to manage. And you know what? We'll say to the NCAA, you can go and manage the schools like Rhode Island, Iona, Sacred Heart, Fairfield. That will be what the NCAA becomes. The bigger schools where the real money is being made, just my opinion, I think the NCAA they're going to push the NCAA out.
Yeah, well, I agree 100%, but the realignment really bothers me a bit, because you're going to have all these, you're going to have, right now there used to be 5 power conference, now you're down, you lost the Pac-12,
yep.
Pac-10, whatever the hell they call themselves.
Pac-2 now.
Pac-2 we're down to. But you have 4 conferences, they're going to be, I don't even know how many teams are in them. There's 15, 20 teams in each conference.
Yeah, there's no need to put a number near them. Yeah.
And it's going to, everybody said, okay, now we're all going to go in and we're all going to get $50 million. Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds all good. That's utopia there. Mm-hmm. But now all of a sudden you're going to see that, we'll pick out a couple conferences there where you've got your Michigan and you got your Ohio State in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Then in the SEC you have your Georgia and you have your Alabama. Mm-hmm. Who draw, they're the 4 biggest names in those 2 conferences. So all of a sudden it's going to come along and say, well, we draw all the people.
Yeah.
We make all the money in our conference.
Right.
What's going to happen in the lower part of that conference.
Right.
They're going to start, instead of everybody getting 50, you're going to have the Alabamas of the world and the Michigans of the world going to say, we should get more money, and probably should because they attract the most attention. So they're going to say, we want 20 or we want 80 and give you 20?
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going to go, but I don't think it's going to go good for the bottom half of any conference.
Right. The only argument you can make is that they need teams to play, so they need that alignment, that conference to keep those teams engaged because they can't just keep playing each other. Right, so, and that's why you have things. Listen, there's a reason why Michigan plays Appalachian State, or that you say to yourself, why would a school like Appalachian State or any lower level school go play a Michigan, or even a Notre Dame, or a Florida, or a Georgia? Well, the reason is they get a pretty big paycheck at the end of the day to walk away. It's called a guarantee. No matter what happens in the game. And that's why it's always a double whammy when, and you remember App State beat Michigan a few years ago.
That they did at the big house.
In the big house. And they walked away with like a $2 million check and a win. So it's, that's not a bad day for Appalachian State.
But that happens once every 20 years. So,
it happens,
so you can't rely on something like that. It's going to really help promote football at all levels. And I think it's going to be... You may even see it in several years from now where the bottom half of these conferences break off into their own conference.
They might. You're right.
And I don't think we've seen the end of this. And I don't. You go back and you feel sorry, because you had the presidents and the athletic directors make these moves, and I think they made horrible moves on the West Coast, where UCLA and Southern Cal are obviously wonderful schools. They have wonderful athletic programs for many, many years.
Yep.
And they jumped to the Big Ten, and they caused a panic.
Yes.
First of all, they panicked. They should have gone out, got themselves like a Goldman Sachs or BlackRock, and said, go negotiate a deal with a conference. Because obviously the president of their conference couldn't get it done. He promised the coaches, I'm going to get this TV contract. He didn't pull his weight, and he came back with nothing. So you hire someone that's in the business of negotiating contracts, a big brokerage firm. And they will go out and they'll get you the money you deserve. But just to jump to the Big Ten, those two teams, then to have everybody else just say, we got to go now because our two anchors left the conference.
Right.
So, that's what happened. And they just start floating off. You're going to have teams like Southern Cal coming to Maryland to play volleyball.
Right.
Now, how do you expect to make? You're not. You try to cut your losses because it's going to be tremendous. All these non-revenue sports are going to cost a fortune just to transport them and house them and feed them, in different parts of the country. But out there, they can, take bus rides and they take a plane up to Oregon and Washington and stuff like that. But now you're going to be traveling to Rutgers, you're traveling to Maryland. That's a long trip.
That is a long trip. It's going to be very interesting, and you're right, because let's not forget, first and foremost, these are supposed to be student athletes. A lot of people, I think, especially in college basketball, it's reverse. Most of them are athlete students. So another conversation for another day. Let's continue in the college space, and let's talk NIL. Name, image, likeness.
Name, image, and likeness. Probably the three worst words in the English language at this point. Because, I like to look at how the makeup of a college athlete. He starts in high school, and I think the worst thing that ever happened to these kids, they go to these camps, and all of a sudden they're 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. You make them good before they're really good. And then, you have that level. Now I'm hearing a rumor, I don't know, it's nothing confirmed yet, that a lot of these athletes, these 5-star athletes, are charging schools $5,000 just to show up to their school. So that's another show we're going to do down the road here. But it takes a lot of money to get these kids into a school, number one.
Right.
Then you have to educate them. Every kid had, and I had them, and everybody has tutors. Those people cost money to make sure that they get through each school year. Then you have the coaches that you pay to teach these kids. You put them on national TV. You give them all the wonderful coaching and education they can get. Now all of a sudden, you're supposed to pay these kids. Mm-hmm. It costs them a fortune to put them to these different levels.
Yeah.
And it's the ultimate. You give them a platform to show their talents to the NFL, to make the league. And with all this going on, you still have to keep in the back of your mind that less than 1% make it to the NFL.
Right.
So it's still going to cost you a fortune to do all this. But if you leave that school without a diploma, you've really lost everything. And you're not going to the NFL.
And at the end of the day, I guess you and I foolishly thought, the biggest piece of this was an education and clearly that's not true for everybody. And we saw it, and it started with college basketball again with the one and done. They weren't student. They weren't there for a degree. They were there to play basketball for a semester, get eligible because that was the NCAA. So that's what the NBA said they had to do. And then once they did that and were eligible for the NBA, off they went. And a lot of them didn't make it there either, too. So we have an issue now with this NIL where students, student athletes are being paid. It has been, it's gone against the stream of what, the NCAA had said for years, that the student athlete is basically, an amateur athlete, and amateurs don't get paid. At least in this country they hadn't. So now you have people making the kid from Caleb Williams. I think he's making $3 million this year.
Well, the Arch Manning in Texas, who's a second or third quarterback. He's a freshman, though. They're grooming him, but he's making $8 million a year. And the quarterback in Notre Dame, I think he's making around $4 million. And again, you look at the NFL and you see the top tier are making all the money. It's a great living, believe me, no matter where you live.
Yeah.
But in college, all of a sudden, you got these top couple guys on each team making a lot of money. What happens to that right guard, left guard, center that's protecting that quarterback to make all his money?
That's
so
right.
These kids are not making much, the linemen. I mean, it's only the top tier, the top 1% making all the money. So I just don't want it to get to the point where the university, if they can, because all this NIL money is coming in from alumni. It's
right.
not, the universities at this point are not paying anything for these kids to, for their NIL money. It's another pool of money where these kids they're filtering it through different charitable organizations or different appearances or whatever. And I just don't want to get to the point where the alumni pool dries up. Then the coaching staff's going to come to the university and say, we need money from you because, we don't have any money in this pool.
Yeah.
But we got to get these kids paid to get them into school here to better our program. And the schools are going to say, okay, if we have to do this, then we can't afford to educate them. And that's going to be the problem because, like I said earlier, that less than 1% go to the NFL. Now you get to the point where we're going to give these kids a few dollars, but we can't educate them.
Yeah.
You're going to push them right through and get away with no diploma, no NFL. Where am I now?
Exactly, and it's a big problem for the colleges because you're right. Colleges exist really to educate not just student athletes but students. And so when a coach comes out, we had just recently had a coach come out and say, I don't know if it was Saban, but somebody like that. They said, instead of giving money for that building on campus, give money to the NIL program, which they all have this collective. So give money to the collective so that we can buy the better players. What is that saying to the student who is just going to school because they want to get an education? Now, you won't build a building and get better in your science, in your math, in your business, or keep the technology up to date because you want to buy a player for a football team. Listen, I love football. You love football. At the end of the day, this is going to a bad place, and it's going there very fast.
And I never thought it would get to this point. I really didn't. I thought it would. I knew there was always going to be some tinkering, because back in my day, we didn't have to go to summer school. Now these kids have to go to summer school, so you couldn't work in the off season, or after the school year, because you have to go to summer school. Back in my day, we used to work construction, earn some money, so we can go to school and have some. Some pizza money hanging around there. But now these kids have no money. I mean, some of these kids, are destitute like I was in the day. I needed that extra money to give a little shot. I worked construction back then. Yeah. Now these kids are going to summer school and lifting weights and playing football summer long.
It's going to take some bright people to figure it out to get it, back on track if it can be. And I'll tell you, as a former person that worked for the Football Foundation, I felt then, and I feel now, that the Football Foundation should be taking a stronger step in policy and helping people navigate, the realities of this and try to get things back on. That's just my feeling. The Football Foundation, for years has done a great job honoring the greats of the game with the College Football Hall of Fame, honoring the student athlete from high school into college. But I think they should be really taking the bull by the horns here and going after the NCAA and after this football deal, this NIL deal. But there's one more thing we need to touch on, and it kind of is part and parcel with everything: the transfer portal.
The transfer portal. Now, last year there were 3,000 kids in the transfer portal. Now, if you don't get taken in that transfer portal,
yep,
you're out of luck, because the school you just left doesn't want you back, and you couldn't find another soft landing somewhere, and it's now you have no. Excuse me. The kids have no place to go. They have, we have a couple of kids in Notre Dame. One transferred out to Arizona State, one transferred out to Alabama, and they're both sitting on the bench at their schools now, when they could be at Notre Dame and trying to earn a position. And what gets me is that, what are we teaching our younger kids?
Yeah,
our kids. Once you get a tough situation, you run. Right. No, when you get into a tough situation, because there's going to be much more difficult situations down in your lifetime than whether I'm getting more snaps on the football field. And you want them at that time to sit there and work harder and try to work through all that, as opposed to jumping and running.
Yeah.
So I think the message we're sending with this portal, there's obviously some good situations where maybe kids are in really bad situations. They need to get a second look.
Yeah.
But to have 3,000 kids, and this is just getting started with this transfer portal.
Yeah.
Now, when these kids start seeing this stuff, they're going to go even further, because they're seeing all this NIL money out there, and they think that grass is much greener at every other school. Yeah. And I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And it's sad, because I think the bottom line, we have to look out for the student athlete.
Right.
And I don't think many people right now are doing that.
I agree, and I think I said it too before we came on the podcast, is that I think a kid gets ticked off because the coach benched him, or he's not getting the playing time he thinks he should get, and it's just too easy. I'm going to go in transfer portal. I'm going to leave, instead of figuring it out or working harder to do what the coach wants you to do. It's a big problem. I think it's a mess. All right. With all that said, and you and I can't solve all the world's ills today. Notre Dame hosts Pittsburgh on Saturday. Pittsburgh comes into 2-5, but could be a dangerous game for the average.
5-2.
Are they 5?
Oh, you mean? I'm sorry, Pittsburgh. I thought you said Notre Dame. Yeah.
No, Notre Dame is 6-2.
Yeah, Pitt is 1-2.
Yeah,
but Pittsburgh is always difficult for Notre Dame. For some reason, even back in my day, they were always a tough out.
Yeah,
when they want to play. And they had a quarterback, Phil Dracovic, who played at Notre Dame, who I know personally, and I thought he'd do a lot better than what's going on, because I think he's had a real rough ride so far through college football. But they've transferred that, and
yeah.
John, I got to leave here. Sorry.
Terry's a popular guy, folks.
Everybody calling on the phones and all this stuff. But no, I think. What scares me is when you're coming. We needed the bye.
Yeah.
And but coming off a bye could be one way or the other. You could really come out storming, or you could come out flat as a pancake. And if you come out flat as a pancake, Pitt has some pretty tough ball players.
Yeah.
And I think they could cause some problems. So I think the first quarter is going to be the real telltale. If we come out strong, I think we'll be fine.
Okay.
But if not, we could have a dogfight.
There you go. All right. We'll look forward to that. We'll look forward to next week's podcast. Terry, good job.
David, good to see you again.
Hanratty'S Huddle and Terry Hanratty, and thank you for listening.